Good afternoon, Patriots. This is Bill Muckler, bringing you the American Vision, brought to you on the TLBTV network and sponsored by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm coming to you from my home in studio in Cocoa, Florida, overlooking the beautiful Space Coast of Florida. And today I'm honored and really excited to have a special guest with me, a good friend, old friend. I've been on his show, and I'm reading his book right now, and that's Michael Howell. And Michael, welcome to the American Vision. We're so excited and honored to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, where are you coming from? I understand you're doing a lot of traveling.
Yeah, I'm on a 2-year tour. I'm a lecturer and a speaker. My wife is also a lecturer and a speaker. So we're on a 2-year speaking tour, and we just finished the East Coast. So now we're in Houston, Texas, and we're going to be stationed out of Houston for a while before we start the West Coast of our trip. So
and how long do you anticipate that to be?
We plan on being in Houston maybe another month, and then we're going to start the West Coast of the speaking tour.
Are you going to California?
Mm-hmm.
I hope you
California.
Some pockets of goodwill there.
Well, my wife is actually from Washington State, so the whole West Coast is her stomping ground. So we plan on being out there for a while and just having a good time together.
Yeah, and this is Michael's new book, Anatomy of the Global Agenda. And so, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I know you've had a radio show and a little bit about your background and bio, so the readers or the readers and the viewers both get to know who you are.
Well, I did have my radio show. It was called Fighting the Tyranny. That's actually where you and I met at.
Yes.
And I do still have that brand, so I have a Facebook like page. So if anybody wants to follow me, I do have a Fighting the Tyranny Facebook like page, and actually just started an Anatomy of the Global Agenda Facebook page. So please like those two pages. But yeah, I've been a writer for about 20 years. For me, I'm 43 years old. For me, it was whenever I was 14, 15 years old, looking at the JFK assassination. Even as a 14, 15-year-old kid, it just didn't make sense. So that early experience is what set me on the road of finding truth or fighting globalism. Of course, at 14, I didn't understand the term globalism or what all it encompassed, but that's what led me on the pursuit of truth and this political road that I've been on. But life has a funny way of happening. So after high school, I went and joined the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for 4 years and did my thing and got out and, did what all of us do, got jobs and stuff. But I still had this burning desire to find truth and figure out why are we a constitutional republic, but we're not acting like it? Why do we have a checks and balance system set up to hold our government accountable, but it's only us that's being held accountable for crimes or anything like that? It's just the corruption got so heavy-handed on one side for the elite that I wanted to find out the truth. So I wanted to find out. So after the Air Force, I started working, normal jobs just like everyone else. But that burning desire, that political desire that I had burning in me was still going on. So that's what led me down this road. I never thought I would write a book. I've always been an article writer, and I've always enjoyed articles. I've always loved them. Then finally, I got tired of hearing people say, you need to write a book about this. So I did. And that's where we're at on Anatomy of the Global Agenda.
Yeah, I know. I guess the same thing happened to me is they kept saying, you need to take all these rants and write them down in a book. So,
yeah.
And I know you've been giving me high praise on my book, and I appreciate it so much. But when I wrote my book, I had a few things that I really had in mind that were like my guide for my book, and one of them was that the best thing for we the people was a small, limited government that was close to home. So if we want a government that's small without this big bureaucracy, a streamlined government, and then if we have a limited government, which is limited in power and all these regulations, then it's close to home. It's here in our city, in our county. Globalization is really a total opposite of that. And I cannot understand how people would say globalization is a new world order. You know, we have to have these things because that's not a small limited government close to home. That's a big burgeoning government that's maybe in Brussels or someplace like that. And it's fraught with regulations and power. And I guess that's where you're coming from in your book, Anatomy of a Global Agenda.
Right. And one thing I try not to do is fight the political battles, because we're caught in a two-party system that's acting as one party, and there doesn't seem to be the real, among the people, the voters, we maintain the two-party mentality because Republicans hold their values, Democrats hold their values. But it seems like once it gets to Washington, it's just a hodgepodge and it just all blends in together, and there's only one party, and it's not of the people. It's of corporations. It's of the military-industrial complex. It's of big pharma. One of the things that we fought World War II over was the fascist regime of Adolf Hitler. Well, if you look at America, and I know this is hard to hear because it's hard to say. We don't write these books because we hate America. We write these books because we love America and we hate what was being done to her. But if you look at globalism not only affects national sovereignty, but it takes away your individual sovereignty as well, your natural God-given rights. This isn't about religion or about God. No one has any right to your natural rights or God-given rights, whatever you choose to believe, except you. But what globalism encompasses is it's all about destroying creation, because this is a Luciferian agenda. This isn't about what Michael believes, about what Bill believes, or what so-and-so believes, because we're not in control of the world's resources. They are. So when they start talking about their plans, and another thing about globalism is they don't hide one thing from us. They'll write books, they'll give speeches about it. Look at George Bush in '91 says New World Order 6 times in the State of the Union address. I say it one time and people roll their eyes at me and call me crazy. So I got tired of this double standard. Why do I say New World Order and people roll their eyes, but George Bush, John McCain, John Kerry, all these world leaders say it, and it's the next best thing since sliced bread. So I wanted to address globalism. I wanted to come from this book. I wanted it to be a book that Republicans and Democrats could read, and at the end of the day, they're on the same page, because it's not party politics. It's about individual sovereignty.
Yes, and that is so important. And I'm glad you brought up about George Bush 41 back in, I guess it was 1991, when he talked about New World Order. And I heard that for the first time. And I thought, what does he mean by that? What's that all about? And I remember hearing people talking about it. They said, oh, isn't this great? We're going to have a New World Order. But nobody had any idea what it was all about or what they were talking about. But I think he and his cohorts knew exactly what they wanted. Can you explain to us a little bit about what is this global agenda that the elites want to impose upon us?
What the global agenda is, and in more detail, what it does is what the Luciferian wants is the one thing that they can have, and that's your free will. So they're going to go after, and they're going to take everything around that in order to steer and guide your free will. That's the one thing. All this is this is no different than Genesis 3, chapter 3, verse 22, when he talks about eat of the tree of knowledge and you will become like gods. Well, that's all this Luciferian agenda is. They're trying to knock God off of his pedestal. Same thing that King Nimrod did with the Tower of Babel. They want to build a tower so high that they're able to look God in the eye and be his equivalent. Look at Skull and Bones, Secret Society. Look at Trilateral Commission, Club of Rome, and we could go on and on and on. And what globalism does is, one of the things that national borders are real important right now. And I'm only going to speak from my experience as a Christian, but When King Nimrod, and this is the root of the global agenda, comes from King Nimrod. He is the first Antichrist, or first one to rebel against God as far as trying to institute a new world order, globalist form of government here on Earth. So that's what the Luciferian agenda is. It's about destroying creation. It's about taking over your individual sovereignty. Look at our monetary system. There's no bigger way that we're enslaved to the New World Order or the global agenda than through our monetary system. We don't have control of our military anymore. That's under global control, which is being held by the United Nations. If you go back to George Bush, not only did he talk about the New World Order and all that, but he also declared and pledged our government, our national or our republic over to, and he pledged it to the United Nations Charter, not the U.S. Constitution. Well, why is it when Michael Howell says these things, it's crazy? Like when Bush or Obama said we're days away from radically transforming America. Why didn't we say time out? What do you mean radically transforming America? Well, when George Bush talks about New World Order, why don't we do the same thing? Time out. What is the New World Order? Explain this to us. So what happens is we get decades down this road, and it's like a snowball. It starts off as, catchphrases in a State of the Union speech, and then by the time it gets in the middle of it, of the avalanche, you've got policies now tied into it. You got legislation now tied into it. You got foreign policy, domestic policy, trade policies. So it's when the snowball's on top of the mountain that we need to address these and say, whoa, wait a minute. What are you talking about when you say New World Order? What are you talking about when you say we're days away from radically transforming America? But what happened is there's such a disconnect from people in the political system nowadays. Nowadays, it's cool to say, well, I don't follow politics. It's boring. Well, it is. But the legislation and the policy that's guiding you through the political system isn't boring. It is tyrannical, and it is with purpose. These people don't want money. They have money. They want your money because with money comes the power. So when we see institutions in a gradual tax system, which is straight from the Communist Manifesto, when we see a new tax in place or whatever, that is a transfer of wealth through artificial inflation and some other taxationist theft movements. But when we see that transfer of wealth, that is part of the global agenda. That is at the root of it, because not only is it our rights and sovereignty that they're wanting to take, but they're wanting to encompass us mind, body, and soul. Like I said earlier, the one thing that they want is our free will. That's the one thing that they can't have. But they can try to legislate us into manipulating our free will. And that's what the global agenda is.
Yeah. So what you're really saying then is they're not really out to get our money. What they want to do is they want to control our money, because if they can control our currency, then they really control us, because that's the only thing we have to go out and use to barter, so to say, a place to live, the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, our transportation, everything we do is tied to currency. And I know everybody watching here is looking at that guitar and it says "End the Fed," and that's the first thing. When I first met Michael, he had on his Facebook page, his portrait is the "End the Fed." The logo that he has there, and in my book I wrote a chapter on the Federal Reserve. And can you tell everybody about how central banking really got started, and how we really become slaves to the central banking system that's really controlling our lives, controls if we want to borrow money, they set the interest rates. There's no free market involved in any of this that I can see.
No, there is no free market in our monetary system. There's a big push right now to denounce capitalism and to say, capitalism is what's causing the divide between the 99% and 1%. And in some aspects are right, but it's crony capitalism. It's not true capitalism. If we were to look at a true capitalistic society, our black markets, to be honest with you, represents more of a capitalistic society than our economic system now. I don't want to get sidetracked. I really want to answer your question, but that is part of the answer in the question. Our monetary system was taken over in 1913, but this was actually the third attempt. We had two prior central banks before the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and they were both on 20-year charters. Back then, at the time, once those 20-year charters were done, the people were more aware, more awake of the harms of the central bank and what all came along with having a central bank in your country. So those charters didn't renew. They were expired. In 1913, on December 22nd, 1913, while 1/3 of Congress was at home celebrating Christmas with their family, the remaining members of Congress, of course, the manipulated, the corrupt ones, what happened was they voted on, or they were going to vote on the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Now, here's an interesting story that I never hear anyone talk about. When the guy came back, and I forget his title, I apologize for this, I've said this story a million times, and all of a sudden his title slips my mind, but when he came back into the congressional hall, he said the Federal Reserve Act passed. Now, what that means is that was a term that they used kind of like abstained. Say we make a bill, I don't know, the Michael Howell bill, and Bill Muckler doesn't vote on it. Bill passed on voting. Well, that was a terminology that was meant to be used in there wasn't enough people. There wasn't, nobody was voting. So the Federal Reserve Bill was passed, not passed as in became law. Well, with 2/3 of Congress at home, it's easy to manipulate that. But anyway, there's several good books out there. Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin is probably the greatest book about the Federal Reserve I've ever read. In the Fed by Ron Paul does a great job of explaining it. But the Federal Reserve has always been at the root of my fight. In all the issues that we have with each other and all of our domestic policies and stuff, the Federal Reserve is one issue that we can all rally around, and it's nonpartisan. It affects everyone. Everyone has a dollar in their pocket or beholden on currency. So this is a nonpartisan issue that we can all get behind. And actually, the Federal Reserve and the monetary system is at the root of the global agenda as well. So keep fighting chemtrails, vaccines, and all of your other fights that we have. But at the root of this global agenda, it's being funded. It's being carried out. The monetary system through the Federal Reserve, not only are they making us debt slaves through a gradual tax systems, but they've taken over our military. They've taken over our Congress. We now have corporations writing policies. Look at Obamacare. It's written by insurance companies. It wasn't written by representatives using my voice. It's written by 5 major insurance companies with the intentions of being profitable, not providing health care. So when you talk about the global agenda, it's really hard. That's why I'm tripping, because there's not really one avenue to speak about. But the global agenda encompasses your monetary system, your health, your education, all aspects of your life. And they want the global control. They want you under their thumb. And it is a nefarious Luciferian agenda. So.
And when you say Luciferian agenda, I'm thinking Lucifer, and I'm thinking the devil, and I'm thinking something evil, and I can't see anything good that can come out of this global agenda. And we've seen it in Europe, for example, a year ago. And I wrote, I wanted to write a little short piece on this Brexit thing. Britain exiting the European Union. And I ended up with so much material. I had to cut out I think something like 80,000 words or 80 pages or whatever, just to get it into 3 articles about how bad this was for Britain. Because what was happening was people in wherever the European Union was headquartered, and I think they had headquarters in maybe 3 or 4 different places in Europe. They were actually writing regulations and policy for what the British subjects, the British people, had to endure. And so when we get into this global agenda, if this takes over, And the United Nations, this is something else we agree on, get the UN out of the US and the US out of the UN. If the UN takes over, they're going to actually write policies and they're going to control the American people. And when they do that, they can destroy things like the Second Amendment, which I think is the most important amendment, because once they get our guns away from us, they accomplish what most of these hideous dictators like Hitler and so forth and Stalin have done to their countries.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like George Washington said, the Second Amendment is the liberty's teeth. You take away our Second Amendment, then I love our First Amendment. I love all of our amendments. I love our rights. But let's be honest with you. Two people sitting down talking, when one becomes overbearing or whatever, the Second Amendment acts as an equalizer. And I'm referring to the government and the people here. The Second Amendment isn't for criminals or whatever. It is against a tyrannical government. And people always say, well, Michael, this is 2018. That doesn't happen. We formed America based on a 3% sales tax. 3%. Anybody out there want to tell me what tax bracket you're in right now? Some of y'all might be in 23, 20, 33% tax bracket, but that's what your CPA told you. What tax bracket are you honestly in? All right. Up to 75% of our total income now is being taxed. What people look at when they're talking about taxes, they look at their paycheck and go, oh man, Uncle Sam took so much out of my paycheck. But that remaining pay that you have, you're going to be taxed on that as well when you go and fill up your car, when you go and buy groceries, when you go and buy clothes, when you school supplies or whatever. So the tax isn't just payroll. The tax is a gradual tax, which was straight from the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx, was to institute a gradual tax. Now, I'm going to be long-winded here, but this is very important. What we're seeing in the economic system right now is the Cloward and Pivens strategy. And a lot of people, that might be a new term to you, might not understand it, but in the 60s, there were two professors that was given the task of destroying America from within. It was Francis Pivens, and I forget Cloward's name. I apologize. But
yeah, they were both from Chicago, I believe, University of Chicago, maybe, and
and they were actually given the task of coming up of a way to destroy America from within using the economic system, and they came up with what's been known as a Cloward and Pivens strategy, and that's what we're seeing in our economic system in many aspects. Cloward and Pivens strategy deals more towards the welfare system and burdening the system in that capacity, to where the system is just so overburdened that total control of everybody else comes through the burdening of the welfare system and things of that nature. But everything that's happening now, if you look at the last 20 years, it's like someone flipped on a light switch and everything has been ramped. We went from the Korean War or Korean conflict to Vietnam War to, all the threat of Cold War, to now we're just having conflicts. It seems like every single year. On any given day, we're bombing 8 countries. 8 countries. It's not a partisan thing. It's not the Democrats doing it. It's not the love of war for the Republicans. They're not doing it. It's both parties. Obama ran under the intentions of we shouldn't be in Afghanistan. We have no business being in Iraq. So what does he do when he comes in office? He doesn't end those wars. We started 5 more. We bombed Yemen and more countries. So we actually started 5 more wars with Obama, the peace-loving Democrat. The one guy who at the time people thought, okay, he would get us out of Afghanistan, Iraq. Fast forward 8 years through his administration, and now you got Donald Trump, who for the last 20 years has been saying, the last 10 years has been saying we don't need to be in Iraq, Afghanistan. Came out during the time of the invasion and said we don't need to be in there. So what does he do? He drops the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan, a country that he doesn't even believe that we should be in. He continues the war in Afghanistan, and now we're looking at Iran and Syria, North Korea. I don't believe North Korea is anything's going to come out of that. But what I'm saying by all this is there's a ramp up using our men and women in uniform to accomplish their goals. I was military, okay? Whenever I say this, people think, oh, well, you don't love your country or you don't love America. That couldn't be further from the truth. I joined the United States Air Force because I loved my country. I'm mad at my military because I love my country. I'm mad at my government because I love my country. If I didn't have a care in the world, then I would just be here living my life, not worried about all of this stuff. But according to Ezekiel 33:7, I'm commanded by a higher calling that if I see the sword coming, I am to blow my trumpet. All I can do is blow my trumpet, Bill.
Mhm.
If you need the warning and you say, hey, man, what are you blowing your trumpet for? And I point out that the sword is coming, that's fine. But all I can do is blow my sword. And that's what I wanted to do by Anatomy of the Global Agenda is I wanted to blow my sword and say, hey, guys, the sword is coming. And it's not for protection. It is for takeover. So globalism has always been really big with me. I don't fight the political system and the R's and D's and the libertarians and the independents. I claim a libertarian philosophy, but I want to be outside of the political party, and I want to go after the elephant in the room, which is globalism.
Yeah, and that's what I really liked about your book. And I know when I wrote my book, I purposely made sure that I didn't introduce Republicans and Democrats and independents and so forth in the book. I wrote the book for we the people, for Americans, in relationship to our Constitution. And being in the service also, the military is really great for young men and young women. I mean, it was a great thing for me. But what's happening is we've got this huge military industrial complex that is spending all this money, and each side is being funded by the same money, right? So, and then they use us as pawns when all we want to do is say, hey, we love our country, we respect everything about it, and we want to do something to protect our Constitution, but they're not thinking about protecting our Constitution, and that's really the oath that we took when we entered the service, was to protect and support and defend the Constitution of the United States, by the way.
Right. You ask a service member about their oath or their pledge or whatever, and that was something that we took seriously. I was a little 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid. I remember raising my right hand and not really thinking or understanding the power of it or what all it encompassed. But as you're wearing the uniform, as you're going and doing your daily duties, and as you're starting to understand it, you're right. The military was a wonderful thing. I learned a lot about myself during that time. It instills principles. But the one thing that I hate to see with our military is we have moved towards a United Nations control. We don't go to war now based on declarations of war through our representatives in Congress, which is my voice. That's where Michael Howell and Bill Muckler's voice is heard. Whether you agree with the war that's being proposed or disagree, that is the one avenue that you have to express your voice on the national level through your elected representative in Washington. Well, what's dangerous about going to wars on United Nations resolutions instead of congressional declarations is the people's voice is suppressed, right? The United States isn't part of the UN. I don't care what the United Nations says, does, or anything, because we are a sovereign constitutional republic. What they do not have the right to do is usurp my voice in any way, shape, or form, especially when it comes to sending our men and women in uniform to die for me back here at home. United Nations does not have the authority, the control, nor should we shouldn't have anything to do with United Nations. Get them out of New York. They have no business being in a constitutional republic. After World War I, we had the very first attempt at a global government, and that was the League of Nations. The League of Nations, right off the get-go, from its founding, was riddled with corruption. It was riddled with mismanagement, and it failed to prevent the Second World War II, World War II, which was the reason for its dissolvement and everything else. But actually, World War II was planned. They knew the League of Nations wasn't going to last. What happened after World War II, after World War I, it was such a bloody war. It was the first war on such a global scale. on such a massive scale. So they were seen to be the war to end all wars, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, World War II came along. You had German under World War I debts. You had the Versailles treatment that Hitler was really just livid about and didn't do good for the German people. And there's several things that led to World War II. But from World War II, the main thing that we need to get out of it, because we didn't end fascism, we didn't. Through Operation Paperclip and some other things, we propelled fascism, if anything. And that's a tough pill to swallow. It was for me, at least. But after World War II, you had the creation of the United Nations. And this was the institution, or the instituting of the modern day one world order. This is the centralized location that one world government, one world rule is going to be legislated from. I always have a saying that the Rothschilds are going to fund the New World Order and the Rockefellers are going to legislate it. And that's what we're having. We're having, on a global scale, we're having the Rothschilds funded through their fiat currency, funded everything. I mean, everything, the Rothschilds fund. And then you have the United Nations, which is a Rockefeller creation, doing the legislation. So the New World Order is funded by the Rothschilds and legislated by the Rockefellers.
You know, I really appreciate what you just said, because the depth that you went into and your insight, and I've never heard anybody really explain it like you have. This is golden, what you just said. I mean, the message is golden for us who are watching this, because you nailed it. And I really don't have anything else to say other than you explained it so well, and that most of the people, we just don't understand the horrors that are going to befall upon our children and grandchildren if we keep going down this globalist path.
If you look at, here's a scenario I like to use. If you look at the Civil War, mm-hmm. and I won't even get into the politics of it, let's stay with the emotional element of it. And let me plead to your listeners to please understand globalism, because this scenario I'm about to give you under globalism is going to happen. In the Civil War, what did we have? We had brother against brother, father against son, cousin against uncle, right? In World War II, right, what was happening in Germany? Neighbors that lived together side by side for 20 years, you know, gave each other sugar, shared milk, and probably kids played together. But because of globalism, what happened one day? This neighbor turned in that neighbor for no other reason than being a Jew, right? For no other reason. Kids played together. Hell, their kids probably grew up and went to school together. They were probably on the same homeowners association, probably had potluck dinner at church from time to time. But because of globalism now, what happened? They pitted each other against each other under false pretenses. There's no reason for that neighbor to hate each other, but now, because of the ideas and the workings of a madman, the ideologies of globalism, now we have neighbors turning in neighbors. Now we have neighbors going, oh, look underneath the bed, Mr. Nazi soldier. He's underneath there. So what globalism does is it drives a wedge so deep between us that we're turning brother against brother, father against son, mother against daughter. We're turning neighbors against neighbors. No more is it more evident than on social media today. Look at how people talk to each other on social media. Look at the ideologies that's coming out of it. These aren't constitutional republic ideologies that we're seeing today. These are things from the Cloward and Pivens strategy, things from the Communist Manifesto. This New Ageism. People, wrap your head around New Ageism. New Ageism is the destruction of creation. It is elevating you to godlike status. And I'm sorry, but a creation will never be greater than the creator. And that goes for not only our Heavenly Father, in my opinion, but look at the computer. The computer can do so many wonderful things. It can do more math equations in a second than I could do in 20 lifetimes, probably 100 lifetimes. But will a computer ever be greater than the creation? No. The creation can never be greater than the creator. The elite, Luciferian, nefarious, I got a lot of adjectives I could use for them, but they know this. They know that they will never be greater than the creation. King Nimrod, when he was building the tower, he had to know that even if he built it up to the heavens and looked God in the eye, God spoke all this into existence. Surely a tower is not going to put them on the same level. But this is the mindset that they have. They don't understand the wonders of life. They don't understand and appreciate the beauty in life that you and I do, that you and I see in our neighbors and that we see in each other. They have such a disconnect for life that look at the societies that they come up with, the mascots they use, the terminology they use, skull and bones, a brotherhood of death. You know, that's a fraternity. And I don't want to say fraternity because it's not. That's a secret society on an American college campus, on Yale University, one of our prime institutions of education is surrendering to this global agenda. Look at our Rockefeller-owned educational system today. It's nothing. We're not teaching kids how to think. We're teaching kids what to think. All right. There is no more raising your hand in class and saying, "Teacher, I don't understand this program." Well, here's the answer. Let's move on. Whoa, wait a minute. That's not education. That's indoctrination. But it's like Hitler, and I believe Stalin's even has said it, and many dictators have. Give me control of the youth, and within 2 generations, you have a completely different society. Well, look at when government took over the education in the 60s. Excuse me. Look at when government took over education in the 60s, and look at the 2 generations since then, and look at our education system now. We are constantly in every category going down. We're not the richest nation anymore. We're not the most successful people anymore. We're not the most educated people. We're not the most technologically advanced people. Why? All right. How do we go from being such a beacon of peace and technology and advancements in the world to now being subpar in these categories? Part of it is our education. Part of it is our trade deficit, our trading that we do around the world. Look at our manufacturing jobs. That's Cloward and Pivens. Our manufacturing jobs going overseas, factories being built in Mexico and India. Look at our technology jobs in the computer industry. They're going to India. They're going to other countries. All of this is by design because it is the crippling of the middle class. The middle class is the backbone of the family, of the economy of America. It is the middle class that is going and creating the new job opportunities through market creation and things of that nature. So at the root of their attack on us is going after the middle class, because once they break that middle class, we always talk about the 99% and the 1%. Well, what's in the middle of that? The middle class. If we can get rid of that middle class, and what they want to do is they don't want the middle class to go this way. They want it to go this way. So by eliminating the middle class, they're also creating that wedge between us and them, ruling class and serfs. So the more that they can drive that wedge up, the more power and control they have. Think of money as a tool in their toolbox. The actual physical money, they got more of it than their great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will ever spend. So the money is the tool part of it. They're using that as a tool. It's your sovereignty. It's your individual sovereignty. It's your mind. It's your body. It's your soul that the globalists want, that the global agenda wants. They're using the money for it. They're using the political systems as means. They're using our educational system. And the one thing that hurts me the most, and you being a former Marine, I'm sure it hurts you, is the way that they're using our military to accomplish their ideology, not the restoration of the republic, not the preservation of liberty, not the things that our men and women are supposed to be fighting for. And that's the one thing that really, and when you talk about it, it always circles back. This is how they're good at it, at dividing us, is if you speak out against it, then you don't love the military or you don't love your country. And it's my love for the military and my love for the country that gets me to write Anatomy of the Global Agenda, that gets me to go on and do my rants or want to spread information. So we really need to understand globalism and what's at the root of globalism.
Well, Michael, I think we can kind of end it on that point, because the way we're going to really understand and learn about globalization is to read The Anatomy of the Global Agenda. And actually, this is really the first of 3 books that you're writing. You have 2 more books that are going to be follow-ups or sequels to this in this series that you're writing.
I do. I've got my copy right here, but with part 1, what I wanted to do was, I didn't want to tell the regurgitating story, because you go to anyone, they can tell you about the Rothschilds or Rockefellers, but I've never saw a New World Order book, or I've never seen up to this point a New World Order book that had the Fabian Society in it, Cloward and Pivens, and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Excuse me. So that's what I wanted to do, was I wanted to write a book that told the entire story of the global agenda, not just key points. Now, I could have taken any chapter in that book and wrote its own comprehensive book in itself. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to give the key players, the key strategies, the societies that are doing it, and the wars and the other false flag events that they use to institute the global agenda. Part 2 is going to go more into DARPA, CERN, creation versus evolution, more of the ideology of New Ageism, theosophy, and some other parts. And then Volume 3 is going to be more economics and things of that nature. So it's a good series. It really is. I'm proud of it myself. I think if anyone out there gets it, that they'll be really, really impressed with the information that's contained in it. And if you do get the book, after you read it, don't put it back on your shelf. Go give it to a friend, and keep the book going. Not just my books, but all of us out there that are writing books, trying to spread information. If you do get one of our books or one of our documentaries, because there's a lot of documentaries out there that we're making as well, but once you're finished with it, if you do believe in that book and you do believe in the message, pass it on to a friend. Start with your family members, what I always say. We don't want to pass up our family members to get to a friend because of the global agenda's ideology and everything. We want to reach everybody. So whether it's your book, Mr. Bill, or whether it's my book, or whether it's anybody's book, once you're finished with reading with it, pass it on to a loved one and let them have the information that you just got.
Okay. I don't know if you'll be able to see this book because my green screen and backdrop doesn't always work so good, but I have the book and I pre-ordered this, and Michael signed it for me and put a nice inscription in here. And Michael will be happy to do that for you too. And I'm so impressed with this book. I wanted to be able to have it with me every place I go, so I actually ordered it also for my Kindle. And I'm just showing it to you here on my phone because wherever I go and I see people, because when I go outside, I'm probably not going to be carrying this with me, but I've always got this with me, and I can say, hey, I want you to see something you really need to pay attention to. You really need to read and learn this because this is really important for our future. So, Michael, thank you so much for being my guest today. I'm really excited about it. You really taught me a lot, and I'm sure all of our viewers have really seen and heard a message that's so important for us for today and for our future. So anyway, thank you very much, and we'll talk again sometime, I hope, soon.
Absolutely. Well, I've always enjoyed talking to you, Mr. Bill, and I appreciate you for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Okay, boys and girls, I'm back after our commercial break. I hope it got cut out and you were able to fast forward through it. Anyway, I was just so excited to talk to Michael, and he just tells us everything that we need to know, and his message is so important that you really do need to get his book. And actually, he's more complimentary about my book than he is about his own, but I wanted to make sure we didn't really get into that too much because I'll do this the shameless self-promotion of my own book. But anyway, I pre-ordered his book and I got it signed, and then I need to have it for my Kindle and phone so I could show it to people when I'm out and about. But anyway, and I hope you don't forget to get my book and tell everybody about my book. And if you go ahead and order my book. I'll inscribe it for you and send it out to you. I mail it out free. I want you to join the 2020 movement and get the book and read the book. And like I've told you so many times, if you can't afford the $20 to order the book, then you know, I'm going. You write to me and tell me that, and I will send you a signed copy of my book. And I won't charge you a penny for it. I won't charge you the shipping or anything, because this is so important. But if I do send you a book like that, I'd at least like to have you write a review. And that's what all of us authors want. Is we love to sign our books, but we also love to have you guys write a review for us and let us know what you think about our work and so forth. And you know, we pour our hearts and souls into this. I mean, this is our passion. Everything we do is to try and bring you the truth about what's happening in America today, and why we feel so strong about so many of us that I guess I've had on here have actually sworn the oath to defend and support the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's really what it's all about. So anyway, I'll go ahead and leave you now with these words. God bless you all. God bless America. And God save our Corps and our guys on active duty, guys and gals on active duty. And boys and girls, don't forget what was said back in 1776. God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.